Welcome to Thrive Vision with your host, Dr. Stephanie Ballman.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. B. Welcome back to Thrive Vision. Today, I have a very special guest joining us. It is my friend and colleague, Gerald Roliz, and he has an amazing, thriving practice that is in Idaho.
Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho. And it is called Natural Health Improvement Center of Idaho. Gerald and I have known each other for a very long time. We've done lots of trainings together, and I have done some trainings under Gerald. And I wanted to bring him on today because he has an amazing background and he's a very successful clinician. So when Gerald and I first met, Gerald was working with Standard Process, which is a fantastic supplement company that we use quite a bit in the office. And before that, he worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep. So he has a very amazing, interesting perspective on how drugs work, how they impact the body, and just what the body has to do to recover from that. And so we're going to go into that a little bit today. He spoke at ECO, and the topic of your presentation, Gerald, was drug-induced diseases, right? So we're going to go over that. I'm going to have him explain a little bit about how that impacts the body. And so, Gerald, a question that I have for you, and I think a lot of people have heard this, a lot of our listeners, I say it often in the office, and I think you probably say this to your patients and clients as well, is that the body has to heal once from the drug and then again from the disease. And I know you're going to give us a really fantastic perspective on that. So I'll let you go for it, and let's just get after it, man. Let's move and shake some people today. So welcome. We're excited to have you.
So thank you. I'm excited to be here. And, just for anybody who's listening, if you're currently on a pharmaceutical, just be sure to always work with your prescribing physician for any dosage adjustments. Don't stop any medication all of a sudden, because the potential for withdrawal symptoms or withdrawal syndrome are very real. And as a former pharmaceutical sales representative, I would train medical doctors on how to slowly and properly wean patients off of certain medications, because if they stop them all of a sudden, it can be pretty disastrous. Okay, so I just want to get that disclaimer out there. Make sure everybody knows that, hey, if you're taking, just make sure you're working with a prescribing physician. And then if you are not working with Dr. Stephanie yet, be sure you're working well with her closely, because if you ever want to get to a point where you want to decrease or lessen your need and reliance on pharmaceuticals, it's going to be important that you have a healthy nervous system as well as a properly nourished body. Okay, so just get that disclaimer out there. So, okay, to answer your question, the people are having to heal twice. Yes, it's very much a real thing that all medications have side effects. All drugs have known side effects. And unfortunately, some of those medications actually cause other additional diseases. And we'll talk about the mechanism, how that works. But if you were to go and do an online search and just simply put in drug-induced diseases, you're going to see books, and you can even find them on Amazon. And the very first publication for books made for medical doctors and pharmacists came out in the early 1950s. So this is a phenomenon that's existed forever, right? So now people take one drug. It oftentimes is intended to suppress the symptoms of one particular disease. But in doing so, it gives rise to the next disease or side effects, right? That's what most patients and most doctors are going to be calling them. And some of these side effects are actually full-blown diseases. And the fortunate thing is that I was trained on how to identify this. As a former pharmaceutical sales rep, like I would go into doctors' offices and I would then competitively sell against other drugs in the same class. So I used to sell antidepressants, and I was trying to sell them my antidepressant, and I would start to highlight all the known side effects and diseases of my competitor antidepressants, and then have the doctor scared to prescribe that one, and then he would choose mine. But years later, after I left the industry, then I learned about the diseases caused by the antidepressants I promoted. And one of those is actual birth defects,
Yeah.
So now if anybody here is thinking about getting pregnant and is pregnant and you're on an antidepressant, definitely work with Dr. Stephanie, your natural health care practitioner, and just make sure you're doing everything possible so that you don't need that, and then work with the prescribing physician to slow wean off those. Those are very difficult to come off of if you're undernourished. So there's this mechanism that's very simple, and I think most of your patients and your viewers are going to understand is we develop health problems if we don't have a good diet, right? If we eat processed foods, modified foods filled with pesticides, preservatives, heavy metals, and we then also just don't do anything to fill in the gaps, we develop symptoms. And what we found is pharmaceuticals actually deplete the body of vital nutrients. So if someone's undernourished, they develop a health problem, they go see the medical doctor, and the medical doctor prescribes them a drug, and they become further malnourished, then it's only understandable that they're going to develop an additional disease. And that's the general mechanism that we're seeing in our clinics. And however, people are waking up. People are just like, you know what, I got to.
Yeah, the pendulum is swinging.
I got to put.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when you say that people have to heal twice, absolutely. They have to heal not only from the condition that they have, then they have to heal from the second disease that that first drug is creating, right? The side effects. And that continues on, right? Because it's never, you probably never see just one person starts on one drug, and then what happens is later on they get on a second drug to treat the diseases caused by the first one, and then they get on a third drug to treat the diseases caused by the first two drugs, and then the fourth drug, and it goes on and on and on until sometimes I get patients and they're on 14 medications, and now all I'm seeing in front of me is all their symptoms are literally side effects of the medications. And that's a tough conversation because, where do we start? And, but we always start at the basics, the foundation, what you eat, and just start there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, and to make sure that people are nourished, because if you're not nourished, you can't heal. And you can't heal whether you're on a pharmaceutical or an over-the-counter or maybe a nutraceutical, right? You can't heal if the body's not nourished and getting the rest that it needs to be able to do that. So it's a really good point. And then having drainage pathways that are open to allow the body to move the junk out, the toxicity out. I think that's important as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of individuals who, they'll take a statin, for example. Statin is a cholesterol-lowering drug, and all of a sudden they get constipated, or they'll take certain pain meds and they get constipated. So if someone's getting constipated after taking a certain medication, it's indicative that the drainage funnels are clogged, right? The liver and the gallbladder, the main detox organs, are not functioning correctly, and then now constipated and not eliminating toxins. And so what's important is for us as clinicians, and we help patients identify the link between some of these pharmaceuticals to their actual symptoms by asking, hey, when did you start getting constipated? And of course, then we combine that with a medication history, and we can see, oh, you started this medication in 2024, and this side effect or this symptom started presenting in 2024, and now we are able to turn on light bulbs. And what's great is our patients can actually follow along, and they clearly understand why they start having certain symptoms in relation to their medications. And now we have an opportunity to have a conversation with their medical doctor and asking them, hey, can you back down on the dose at least to start off? And medical doctor will guide that process. And then the person starts feeling better, halfway better. They still have to get to the original reason. But certainly, we want to have people just turn on those light bulbs, correlate. Okay, when did these symptoms start, and when did you start this medication? And it's not only just drug-induced diseases that we're looking at. We're also looking at surgery-induced diseases. You probably have patients that go in for surgery and they were under anesthesia for way too long, or maybe the surgeon left a scalpel inside, or maybe something happened, right? Maybe there's unresolved scars from the procedure. And so oftentimes I also see individuals that don't heal from a surgery. And then they come to us. And so we have to go back and see what happened during that event. What kind of IVs did you get? Did you get antibiotics? Did you get any, what kind of anesthesia? What other medications did they put in there? And then see just what happened with that incident. So we have a lot of work to do. And
we do.
just know that the good thing is have us.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And to your point, and I know you see, you're going to see a lot of different women in your office as well, women who are postpartum. And something I see as both a natural health care practitioner and as a chiro, I see a lot of issues with epidurals and the different, just that injection site. It's a small space. There's, anatomically the body's very compact. Things are put together in a very specific way. And I see a lot of women who have not only biomechanical issues, but then we can sometimes have neurological issues. We can have that injection site issue. And then we know that surgery suites, labor suites, they try to be as clean as possible, but they're still living in this toxic world too. And so what's on that needle? What was that we think is not there, but we know that there's small, very tiny microorganisms that exist. And sometimes that, you're in a room with different people, and sometimes different things can, they're traveling, they're moving, microbiomes are all different. And so that can play a huge part as well, I think, we have to take a look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you covered, pregnancy and births. And absolutely, sometimes I've seen cases just as you, where at the site of injection, whether it is the epidural, oftentimes for some, there can be lasting pain for a couple months. And it's a sign that there's damage there specifically. Right? And then, of course, then they come and start working with you, and you start to help pull the toxins that are specifically located there, help to undo the trauma that's been locally inflicted. And at the same time, too, we start seeing also potential challenges with C-sections. I have women who come in, you as well, and their C-section scar is very sensitive. So when they go to carry their child, they're afraid that the child, when they kick, it's going to kick directly on the scar. And that's a sign that that scar hasn't fully healed and needs additional nutrition support. The opposite is also true. Some women, they come out of a C-section and it's completely numb. And that's indicative that there's anesthesia being stored and stuck there because the body was so undernourished, trying to seal that scar, and it just sent everything it had. And then the anesthesia got trapped in there, and also can be also a result of certain nerves being cut. However, we've seen people perform the proper scar healing work, and then the feeling returns. And it's pretty remarkable of what the human body can do. And that's for all the moms out there, because we treat so many moms, amazing moms, moms that sacrifice their health for the benefit of their kids, and they forget about their own selves. And they always wondered, gosh, ever since my second kid, or ever since my third kid, or ever since my pregnancy, these health problems started and have continued to decline, just worsen over time. And of course, then when they come to us, like you can bring clarity and hope and understand, like, okay, well, we got to trace it back to this. Then it looks like there's certain things we have to unravel.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's something that most people in our realm, you, me, some of our other colleagues, we do a really fantastic job of spending time with our patients and our clients and asking questions and listening to them, and sort of reading between the lines a little bit about what they're not saying and what the body is telling us, because we know the body doesn't lie, right? It doesn't know how. Our minds do. We teach our minds how to do that. But the body, when you can ask it the right questions, and you can look at history, and you can just kind of sit with the person that's in front of you and just be with them and allow that body to come forward, right? Allow the spirit of that body to come forward and just kind of be itself for a little bit. You can pick up a lot of different things and get into some of the things that maybe the person has forgotten, and how certain things in that person's life have impacted them. And we can kind of dive into some of that and go, hey, look, not only do we have pharmaceutical issues we need to talk about, but there's scars, there's injection sites from different things. We've got epidurals, vaccines, all kinds of things that get injected into the body, even IVs. People going to IV bars. That's still creating a scar. There's still a trauma there to the body, and then there's the whole emotional impact that some of those things will have. So, yeah, I think we're doing the right work.
I'm definitely doing work that's better than what I did before, which was selling pharmaceuticals. So,
Yes,
I'm
well,
definitely happy to be where I'm at.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that you have the background that you have to be able to educate people and really talk about, like, hey, these things are happening, right? This is how this happens. This is how this works. And because if you're outside of that space, you don't know. You don't know those things. So,
When I was a drug rep,
yeah.
yeah,
No,
when I
go
was a
ahead.
drug rep, I just thought like that was all what people needed: drugs, surgery, and radiation. And then I finally woke up. There's got to be more, and that's when I learn about chiropractic and acupuncture and herbs and nutrition and meditation and so on. So yeah. And for many of the viewers out there, they too, at some point was, oh yeah, I only thought about drugs and seeing medical doctors. And now they're going out and going into what nature has provided and what actually works to address root causes versus just chemical therapy to suppress symptoms.
Right. So what was the catalyst for you that made you wake up and go, oh, okay, this isn't for me anymore? I don't think that I know that.
Okay.
You want to talk
So why don't we
about that?
just back up a little bit? Yeah, we'll back up a little bit. So when I was young, my mother was diagnosed with a disease called lupus.
Yeah.
And her lupus was idiopathic. And idiopathic to a Western medical doctor means they don't know the cause. So essentially, my mother had this disease, an autoimmune disease. Lupus is where the immune system supposedly is attacking the joints and the connective tissue, the skin, and the person's in a constant state of inflammation. And 17 years old, my brother was 15, my sister was 14. We were at church and she started coughing out blood. So my brother, my sister, and I, we went home, get ready for school the next day, and my father accompanied her to the hospital. And the next day we found that her lungs filled up with blood. They couldn't stop the bleeding, and so she drowned. But they woke her up, right? So then that was a very traumatic time for my entire family. I'm 17 years old, just lost my mom, trying to figure it out, right? What's going on? And I get accepted to UC Berkeley, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to find a cure to lupus. Right. So I know you asked the original question, like, why did I make that transition? And the real reason why I became a pharmaceutical sales rep was because I get into Berkeley, I'm pre-med, and I want to learn how to heal people with lupus. I wanted to find a cure to lupus. At that time, that's all I knew. I only knew Western medicine. I didn't know about natural healing. And so I was pre-med. And then prior to graduation, I decided, you know what, I'm going to become a pharmaceutical sales rep because I can earn a decent living. I can interview these doctors, learn from them on the current cures of lupus, and live a real comfortable life. And I did that for 5 years, and I had an unlimited expense budget. So I took medical doctors out to all the expensive restaurants, and I spent an average of $5,000 a month on food. Average, right? So one month I almost hit, and my budget was unlimited. And within a few years, I realized that I could influence doctors' prescribing habits based on what restaurants I took them out to. And on the other end of that sales transaction is someone else's health.
Right.
And so I also then realized that these doctors still don't have an idea of how to cure lupus. They don't know how to resolve that. And these were the same docs that couldn't save my mom in the hospital. So I left the industry, obviously disenfranchised, still lost, still on this mission to find a cure to lupus. I moved to Asia. I'm half Chinese, half Portuguese. And I completed my MBA degree. And I worked as a business consultant for a Taiwanese global herbal company that actually had herbs clinically trialed, proven to reverse diabetes, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance. And this whole concept of herbs just entered my mind of, wow, herbs can heal people. without side effects. Huh. And so then I also received my first chiropractic adjustment and acupuncture, meditated, changed my diet, and resolved a lot of my own health problems. And then 2009, I came back stateside and I found Standard Process, where essentially I found thousands of natural health practitioners just like yourself, right? And just found a possibility and answers to what I was looking for. So fast forward today, we started the Natural Health Improvement Center in Idaho in 2022. And now I have 3 cases of female patients who had come in with lupus and now they don't, right? They're
Yeah,
ANA
it's amazing.
negative. Yeah. And so I'd like to say that I left the industry because I was still in that quest, still on that mission to find a cure to what supposedly took my mother off the physical planet, right? And so she didn't die of lupus, she died with lupus. And with a lot of my research, understanding the medications that she was given, the injections she was given, I would say that that's what she died from, unfortunately. And you and I were clinicians, and we do our best to help each patient as much as possible. And there's always a patient where we just can't get them to 100%. And the question is always, what are we missing? What next seminar do I need to attend to gather the right information to help this next patient when we come back to the clinic on Monday? And I like to say that my mother was probably the first patient I couldn't help. Right?
Yeah.
And then it's been my life mission to find exactly what I needed to do in the event that same patient came in front of me a second time. So
Yeah.
That's a little bit the long answer as to why I left the drug industry, but also a little bit into my story and why I do what I do.
Absolutely. No, I think that's very important. And I like your perspective that your mom, unfortunately she's not here in this physical plane with us anymore. But I like your perspective about it in that she didn't die because of lupus. She died with lupus and some of the complications that came because some of the pharmaceuticals she was on, right? The root cause wasn't addressed. And so therefore, like we talked a little bit earlier, the medication begot another medication, so on and so forth, and changed how the body is communicating, or what we would call the physiology of the body, away from its natural place of how it's supposed to be talking. And with what you and I do, we're able to swing the pendulum back over time to how the body is supposed to be communicating and allowing the natural process that the body is supposed to be using to heal itself and communicate. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you do it in way cooler ways than I do, because you also help a lot of the animals with your chiropractic, and you have a lot of cool modalities. I wish everybody knows that they can bring their pets to you. Not only they themselves get help from you, but their pets as well. And we do work with pets, but primarily on the nutrition side. And if we could offer chiropractic to these animals, I think they would be a lot happier too.
Yes. Well, I do do pet health coaching, and so we do see a lot of animals as well. And we've got I recently have an animal who was having seizures, and we found the root cause, which was parasites. And we started inducing healing, opening drainage pathways, et cetera, supporting the body nutritionally, and doing some education with the pet parents and allowing them to make some decisions based on the education. And now that dog is seizure free. The parents are sleeping because they were up all the time with this dog. And like the dog's life has been changed, but now the pet parents' life have been changed too. So we do some cool stuff, Gerald. I'm just going to say we do some really cool stuff. Really cool stuff. Okay, so in your... What?
Oh, I feel really lucky. Yeah, to be doing what I do now.
Yes. Yes, I think we have the greatest healing profession ever.
Yeah. Every time I go to seminar, I get to hang out with my best friends, learning amazing information, saving the world one person at a time, right? That's how I think of it.
Yep. One person, one animal at a time. I always like to say that I'm doing kingdom work. I'm restoring the kingdom. And I think it's really important what we do. So, yes. One thing that you mentioned in the talk at ECO is that you went over some different stats, and you said that Americans are the most medicated people on the planet. And then in 2012, which really doesn't seem that long ago, there were over 61% of the adult population taking a prescription drug. That's a lot. And now the number is probably even higher. Yeah. So, and then in 2013, you had stated there's 70% of the American population on at least one prescription drug. And so, how do you, obviously that number is rising. I know that we both see that. But how do you see that either clinically or from your perspective as a former sales rep, how that impacts the body and what how that's impacting people, I guess.
Yeah. Well, first off, I don't blame the patients when they come in and they're on certain number of medications. Everybody is doing the best with what they know. And that includes any parent out there, any patient, any, pet parent, any, even medical doctors, right? Medical doctors. When I was at Berkeley, I have a lot of friends that I, graduated with, and they went on to become medical doctors. Very good people. Have all the great intentions, just train in the wrong stuff. Unless the ones that go into emergency medicine, right? There's a time and place for Western medicine.
Absolutely.
And that's emergency medicine, hospitals. We definitely need their services and their skill sets. But when it comes to those who get stuck in the system where they are just prescribing drugs to address problems caused by poor nutrition, that's where, we just have to remind each other, okay, everyone's doing the best of what they know. Now, when an individual comes in on certain pharmaceuticals, yes, we have to assess that, and we want to take a big overall picture, because sometimes they get symptom relief. And if they've got symptom relief and they read my book, The Pharmaceutical Myth, and start thinking, well, what am I going to do about my hot flashes if I come off my synthetic hormones, right? That's usually the first thing in their mind. Or I get these young women who take birth control because they have acne or they have heavy bleeding, and they come in, and I find out that their medical doctors haven't told them that that birth control pill or that hormone replacement therapy is known to increase the risk of various cancers. And their question is always like, well, what am I going to do about my original health problem if I'm going to stop this? Right. And so it's all about having that information, just gathering as much information, and then putting it back on the medical professional as to, why did you not tell me about the known potential side effects? Because every drug has a potential to cause other diseases, or also known as side effects. And to go back and hold them accountable, because there's this concept called informed consent. Informed consent means the doctor should be recommending a medication, but should also be providing you the information as to what potential harms it can cause. And that, unfortunately, is what they are not informing their patients. Now, I'm at fault of that. As a former pharmaceutical sales rep, I was not trained that the antidepressants I was promoting can cause birth defects. And hence, if I didn't know that, I could inform the doctor of that potential risk. But you can understand, and your audience can understand, why a drug company, a manufacturer, would not train its sales reps on that fact, or would not train the doctors on that fact, because they probably wouldn't make any sales, right? I mean, if you were an expecting mom and you're just like, oh, I want to have a healthy baby, and then you find out that this particular medication can cause your child to have some sort of deformities or underdevelopment in their brain and cognition, you would definitely do everything possible to avoid that. And then more so, seek out a natural solution to the health problem. So I would say that most people, they come in and they're on certain medications, and that's okay. We work with people with wherever they are. And, I'm too. Like, when I was younger, I took pharmaceuticals. My parents injected us because they thought they were safe and effective. I developed side effects, vaccine injury, and we didn't know that. I didn't know that until years later when I did my research. And so just know that, unfortunately, the percentage will always be high because the current system is set up that way. People have health insurance, they have a health problem, they listen to the health insurance company to go find a primary care physician who's only trained in drug, surgery, and radiation. And it's only until people start to break away from the traditional model do they actually find us. Then we start seeing that percentage of individuals on pharmaceuticals starting to decrease. And I think with more and more awareness, we will see more families. Now, fortunate for myself and maybe in your clinic too, I don't know, but we get a lot of individuals who are big on homesteading, homeschooling, people who already have the mindset of restore our sovereignty and be out of the system that's
Right.
forcing us into this toxic path on lifestyle. So I don't know, do you see that in your practice?
I do. I do have a lot of, I see a lot of moms. And of course, a lot of my moms are exactly what you're describing. They're homeschooling, they're trying to get out of the system, they're looking for ways. And where I live, I don't live in a big city. The big cities are at least a couple to 4 hours away. And so the pediatricians here, you can't go see a holistic pediatrician or a more naturally minded pediatrician. Every single pediatrician is in the system. And, maybe by design to keep the community more within the system. And so I get a lot of moms that are looking like, I can't, what do I do? I can't take my kid to the pediatrician because I don't want to vaccinate my kids anymore. They're moving out of that model. And I mean, that's a whole other topic that you and we could talk about. And so they're looking like, how do I keep my family healthy? And so I think, and you probably have to do this as well, there's a lot of education, not on just here's where your health is at, but here's how you manage this walk and this lifestyle. And, I think it comes from, at least for me, and probably you too, it comes from life experience, like you were saying, in that, I used to be in the system. I grew up in the system. For whatever reason, there was a catalyst that made that change for me, and I moved away. And the more my eyes are open, the more I'm like, oh, we've got to help people, help them make the changes and help them walk this. And so there's definitely, yes, we do have a lot of men. As to your topic, I know we were talking about, different women coming in and, trying to help them move out of that system. And I do have men come in as well that are working to move themselves and helping move their families out. So do you have men in your office that are looking for that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're not sexist in any way.
Of
Helpful to
course not.
everybody. But yeah, for sure. We like to make sure moms are taken care of first, and
Right.
sometimes it's the husbands or the father that come in first, and so in general, a lot of mothers are more keen to making sure that the health of the is taken
Absolutely.
care of. And usually they're the ones who are taking care of the kids, not to say fathers are, being neglectful, but oftentimes we find that moms come in first and then
Right.
they bring in the kids.
Right.
And then the fathers and the husbands start saying like, well, everyone else is getting better. Why don't I get better? And they realize that, oh, their poor digestion, their bad gas is not a normal thing.
Normal.
It may be a common thing, but normal thing. And so then they realize like, man, maybe why I can get you help too. And then eventually they come in. So just like you, we treat a lot of families and everyone's then healthier and then happier together. Because when
100%.
people are not feeling healthy, they tend to be a little more irritable, angrier, not as positive. And so we also see the family dynamics start to elevate. Yeah, absolutely. We treat men. Some of them are really great patients. Some of them are really amazing because they understand that there is something that can be done. They'd like to be in control of their health. They like the information and they'd like to implement and move forward with it. Then we got a couple of men who are like in denial, like there's nothing wrong with me on a rare occasion.
You're right. Right, my wife sent me in here. Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
happens sometimes.
Oh, a lot of those.
Mhm.
On the forums, I'll literally see it. I'm only here for my wife.
Uh-huh.
Seen
Yeah.
that before on the intake form.
Yes.
No.
Yes. My wife made me come. Okay. What can I do for you?
Sometimes
Nothing. Okay.
sometimes I even had right. Sometimes I've had the wives fill out the paperwork and they come in with the appointment. I'm here only because I'll tell you what's going on. I don't think he's
Yes.
gonna be fully upfront, so I'm here to explain it. And so then you and I are trying to work with this dynamic of the
Yes.
relationships right there in the very front of our eyes, trying to gather information, feel what's going on. So it's fun. This is a fun job.
Yeah. Yeah. There's never a dull moment. I will say that. It's always something interesting for sure. Yes. So you had mentioned that, how did you put it? I can't exactly remember, but you had mentioned, in what we were just talking about, you were talking about how, sometimes men are just coming in and they think something is normal, right? And because this is what it was, just because it's common doesn't mean it's
Normal.
normal, right? I say that, I feel like I say some of these things over and over. So I'm glad to know I'm not the only person saying these things. And I hear this a lot with headaches, menstrual cycle issues, men, even with like, speaking of men, snoring, not that women don't snore, they do. But constipation, bad gas, right? It's common. So it's a normal thing, and it's not. And I think it's a good turning point for us to talk about, well, one, that specific thing, but then two, we know that pharmaceuticals have, or maybe you and I know, and there's some people out there that know that pharmaceuticals have long-term lasting effects. And I think a lot of times there are other people who maybe aren't making the correlation or don't realize, maybe a better way to say it is they don't realize the impact that even taking something 5 or 6 times can be changing the physiology enough in the body that it's no longer communicating because those pathways that the body uses to talk has now been disrupted. So how did you
Yeah.
see that as a one, now, how do you see that in your clinic? But then two, um, I think we probably handle that in a very similar way and through both of our clinics. But as a former sales rep, how do you mitigate that?
Yeah. At the end of the day, it all comes with education. And you and I, we slowly educate our patients wherever they are in their health journey and even from the initial intake. So say, for example, if I see a woman comes in and she's been getting the Depo-Provera shots,
Mhm.
also known as the Depo shot,
Right.
they're literally every 3 months getting 3 months of hormone injected into them. And what happens to their hormone system, their whole endocrine glands, from the hypothalamus, pituitary, ovaries, adrenals, right? They get suppressed because they no longer have to make progesterone. If you inject 3 months worth, then it means that that body doesn't have to make progesterone for 3 months. And so then that shifts and changes the physiology, changes how this person operates. And then if they ever want to come off the depot shots, they've literally squashed the hormone system. Like they put it to sleep.
Mhm.
And so in of one shot, maybe it'll hurt it. But if they have multiple years of the depot shots, then their hormone system has gone to sleep. And we can help them revive it, but it becomes important that they have help to remove that synthetic progesterone, right? The depot shot content.
Right.
And that takes work. That takes proper drainage funnel support, takes liver support, gallbladder, kidney detox support. And it's possible that we can revive because, you and I, we see people who take birth control pills for 15 years and they come into us with infertility problems, right? And
Right.
they think like, well, I stopped it 4 years ago. I stopped the birth control 4 years ago and they think they should get pregnant. But it's like, well, what did you do to help your body to clear all of that drug out? Some of it's still in your system.
Right.
And so then that's the good thing is that we can help them with that and then restore healthy, normal, actual menstrual cycles. And so you're right. Most people, they think, oh, even women, I get so many women, you probably do too. I don't know. Do you see women they've always had painful menstrual cramps ever since the first period. I mean, you probably see that. And then they work with us and they're like, oh my God, I don't have painful menstrual cramps anymore. How is this possible? Right? They thought like this is the anomaly. It's like, no, what's normal is no painful menstrual cramps.
Right.
What's common is having painful menstrual cramps because they talk about with their friends. They're like, oh, are you in pain? You're in pain. Okay, you got a hot pack. You're taking ginger chews or you're taking ibuprofen or whatever over the counter med. And, and they have their strategies, but it's like they don't have to live that way. And they don't realize it. Unfortunately, they don't realize it until they come into our clinics because we let them know about the healing potential of what's possible. So, yeah, it's a tough world. But just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal. And whatever symptom your viewers having, your listeners, your patients are having, you weren't born with it. You didn't just have it at birth. Now, if you did, then it's something that was in utero developed. And so maybe there's something we can do for that, maybe not, right? Depending on the cause. But if you grew up and all of a sudden a symptom showed up at a certain age or certain time, then you should know that there's a possibility that can also disappear if you do the right things.
Right, 100%. Yeah. So let's talk, since we're kind of on this topic of birth control and different medications. Let's dive into a little bit about how different drugs impact each other, and then how that plays a role into how it's impacting the body. I think that'd be a great thing for people to know.
Absolutely. There's this concept that most medical doctors get trained on, which is called drug-to-drug interactions. Mm-hmm. Now, you and I are natural health, so we work with herbs, and usually there's very few herb-to-drug interactions. And the media will make it out that herbs are dangerous because medical doctors are not allowed to, they haven't been approved by the FDA. But you want to think about things that have been approved by the FDA are actually dangerous within themselves. Tylenol, an active ingredient called acetaminophen. So Tylenol is available over the counter, and that is the number one cause of acute liver failure in the United States. Like 500 people every year die from overdosing on Tylenol. And every hospital knows this. And guess what? If someone overdoses on Tylenol and they go to a hospital, the hospitals use nutraceuticals. They use N-acetylcysteine to help clear the Tylenol out of the body. So they're actually using close to like somewhat a natural solution to address a pharmaceutical toxicity issue. So anyways, this drug to drug interaction phenomena is very real. And the way it works, most medical doctors know that every drug company, actually all the medical doctors know that every single drug prior to it being released for being prescribed to patients, they study which liver enzymes are responsible for metabolizing it and excreting. Okay, because every drug, every chemical, the body wants to remove it from the body. And so these drug companies actually conduct research to find out, well, which specific liver enzymes are responsible for clearing these medications. Now, what they also found is some of these drugs inhibit or they slow down or they stop the liver. Pardon me.
You're good.
What they found is that some of these drugs actually slow down or inhibit the liver's ability to clear chemicals and drugs and heavy metals. And so if you have, let's say drug A is being cleared by the liver. And I'll give you one example. There's the 3A4 enzymes in the liver. So drug A is being cleared by these 3 or 4 enzymes, but drug B slows down or stops the 3A4 enzymes from clearing drug A. And then what happens is drug A levels in the blood start to slowly rise. And this is where the side effects and other health problems develop. And that right there is the phenomena of drug to drug interactions. And it's happening all over the place. So I see it, you see it. A lot of the pharmacists will see it. I'll see patients come in on 2 medications that are the same exact drug with different names, and they're being prescribed by 2 different doctors. And this tells me that these doctors are not even communicating or seeing what else the patient is taking before they're giving them that prescription. And now this individual is being overdosed. So we also see that as a problem. And, unfortunately, a lot of doctors can't memorize which liver enzymes a drug is being metabolized. And so they are just prescribing, hoping the pharmacist catches it. And oftentimes it's the pharmacist catching the drug to drug interaction situation. So that happens. Now, for you and I, we're concerned about also, there's this huge rise in turmeric, and you and I have access to some real amazing physician grade turmeric formulas that don't have black pepper in. And you're going to see, and I always look at turmeric supplements and I really get suspect when they put black pepper in it, because there's a black pepper called piperine, and piperine inhibits those enzymes in the liver from clearing the turmeric, but the black pepper inhibits the liver from clearing drugs that are metabolized by those specific enzymes. And so what I'm seeing now, due to these low quality turmeric supplements, they're creating this rise of a potential herb to drug interaction that's really unnecessary. The turmeric that you and I carry in our offices are much safer, doesn't have the black pepper, and is very bioavailable. And so that's why it's extremely important that when your patients, your audience work with their natural health practitioner, it comes down to understanding what the clinician knows and trusting that they have always the best interest for their patients, and we have the best formulas to work with.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I find it interesting that you mentioned the black pepper, because for so long it's been taught that with the turmeric needs black pepper in order for it to turn on, to work, right? So that's very interesting. And I do agree that what we carry in the office or in our offices, because of what we're able to get our hands on, for lack of a better term, we have such high quality product that it's going to blow anything else out of the water, I think.
Yeah,
People are,
absolutely. I mean, we get
people are going to Amazon, people are going to just getting the grocery store thing or whatever's at the natural healthcare store. And, no offense to them, but it's not the highest quality. We don't know how it's sourced. The way that these companies that we work with study and put things together, they have healing in mind, and they know the physiology. And so they combine these products in a way that are bioavailable. They're able to be absorbed. They're able to move from the blood into the tissues or into the organs, and vice versa, so that things can be detoxed. So I think that that's really important. And then they're taking, like you said, there's really not a whole lot of herb to drug interactions, right? Not at the level that I think doctors and the media want you to think, right? So we have really safe products that work.
Yeah. Yeah. I always like to remind my patients, and 200 years ago, about 250 years ago, there was not a single vaccine or pharmaceutical on the planet.
Mhm.
There was just herbs and food. And so that's what we're fortunate to use nature's tools, which has always been safe, obviously with the right dose and knowing for how
Right.
long, that helps with the healing process. And this new invention of, the whole entire pharmaceutical industry is a ripoff from nature's, right? So every pharmaceutical company has a division of specific pharmacists that go out to the Amazon rainforest, that go follow the native tribes who have always used herbal medicines, and they take the herbs that these societies have always relied on for optimal health. They bring it back to their laboratory and they extract and they find a couple key phytonutrients that are known to have an active effect on the human body. And then they send it to their chemists. So their chemist takes this naturally occurring phytonutrient and he modifies it, the molecular structure, to create a synthetic version of it, of which then the pharmaceutical company can actually create a patent. Now, before they create a patent, they're going to see if they can conduct clinical trials to use this high dose synthetic chemical, which is a copycat of what was found in nature, see if it can create a shift from one's disease state. So they actually then create a disease then they create these clinical trials. And then these clinical trials, they have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. These studies get published.
Mhm.
And then I, as a pharmaceutical rep, would present these studies to medical doctors showing, hey, this drug can help for this disease. And then the doctor feels, oh, now I have proof. Now I can prescribe it. But all of these chemicals, these pharmaceuticals are just literally a ripoff off of nature. And they have to make a synthetic version of nature in order to patent. Because if they can patent something, they can generate great amounts of profit and then pay their investors what they're owed. So this is the whole industry. And then, of course, the synthetic chemical is what has side effects and drug-induced diseases, and the others don't have. And so the message that, you're giving your patients and your viewers is always go back to nature. Go back to what would you have done 300 years ago if you were living in the rainforest and
Right.
didn't have all of this crazy society's chemicals, pesticides, and electromagnetic radiation. How would you live? Right.
hmm Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and we might dive into it a little bit about the synthetic versus the natural and how the synthetic the body doesn't recognize, doesn't know what to do with it. And so I think it gets built up in the body. It obviously is going to change liver enzymes, it's going to change just the way the body functions in general, because that synthetic form is not, it's not the whole part, right? It's part of the whole, and it's not even the natural form of the part.
Yep.
And so how do
Yeah. And
you
it's fortunate. And then, yeah, and the people are being marketed as if this is safe and effective, right?
Mhm.
Forget about the side effects, forget about the drug-induced disease, but it's safe and effective, and you need to take this because it's the only option,
Right.
according to the medical doctor, or it's the only option to the drug company. And that's so far from the truth. But the great thing is the people we work with are more awake.
Mhm.
They're not stupid.
No.
They weren't stupid to begin with. They're not ignorant, and
Right.
they're now have seen the light. They are, and once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep.
Mm-mm.
That's the great nature of the human condition. So I'm
Absolutely.
happy to when we see people and we can see their transformation. They're waking up, they're in better control of their health. They then start telling their friends and family, and then the whole community starts to improve in terms of their awareness and how they engage with life in general. And so, and then I even have some people that come in and they start planting more herbs, whether it's on their windowsill or their balcony. That's where they start. For some, they start building planter beds, and then they start getting their chickens, and then they start having other, animals on their farms. And for some people who have the resource to do that, it's pretty fun to watch. And then we see together as a community. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's always go back to nature. Uh, and and if a medical doctor is trying to push a chemical as the first line therapy,
Mhm.
just start asking the question, why? Why this therapy first and not food and herbs?
Right. And I think that's a great question to ask your medical doctor. Why? Why are you putting on it? Why are you putting this on me or me on this? Like, how is this going to address the root cause? And it doesn't, right? It's symptom management, I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Now, there are rare occasions. So we do get patients who have had organ transplants. The ideal
Right.
case is people come in before they see their medical doctors to us. But sometimes we get people when they've gone to their medical doctors and their health has declined and they got a liver transplant, a kidney transplant, and now they're running the risk of their own immune system rejecting that organ because it's a foreign tissue and the body's going to fight it. And so, in those rare occasions, they may have to be on that immunosuppressant long term just because of the first procedure, right? The procedure that they put in somebody else's organ in them. And but for the most part, a majority of these pharmaceuticals, they're not addressing the root causes. And then when
Right.
individuals come to us, they can. And then we collaborate with the prescribing physician. So I'm always willing to collaborate with the doctor that they're seeing to teach them how to wean people off medications, because a lot of these medical doctors don't actually know how to wean people off. They know how to switch to a different drug, or they know how to add another drug to suppress the symptoms, the side effects of the first drug. So I always like to have a participatory role with my allopathic colleagues, right? These Western medical doctors. And so for people who are interested in having a better clarity on some strategies and some other options on how to wean our mutual patient off the medications, I'm always willing to have that conversation. I find that some medical doctors are not willing to do that. So we train our patients how to log their blood pressure readings if they're on a blood pressure lowering medication. And so if their blood pressure is dropping and now they're getting lightheaded, gas is a little more air, not getting enough oxygenated blood to the brain, we look at their blood pressure, show this log is demonstrating that the blood pressure is lowering, and then bring that to another doctor. And we see a lot of medical doctors respond to proper records. And so we do coach patients on that. If the patient is on insulin and they're, injecting a certain number of clicks or units, or they're performing, and we haven't tracked the blood sugar numbers and it's coming down close to 100, we want to have them talk with their medical doctor, get that proper dosage adjustment. So we coach people and we train the medical doctors on proper weaning when the time is right, and that's something that's very important to know is for any of your viewers and your patients is always have a team of health professionals. And of course, ideally they have you as the foundation and they have these other prescribers to help wean off medications that are no longer needed.
Right. Absolutely. Gerald, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us today and helping educate people on how pharmaceuticals work, how they're impacting the body, and then different solutions people can seek. And I know we mentioned animals quickly, and nothing against our vet friends because there's a time and place for vet med, obviously. But do you want to talk a little bit about pharmaceuticals and the animal industry?
Yes, I have a lot of amazing friends that I went to Berkeley with who eventually became medical doctors, and some of them became veterinarians. And oftentimes they became veterinarian because they love animals. They grew up with a dog, cat, horse, goat. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends and classmates that when they graduated from Berkeley, went on to vet school, they then went into two routes. They went into either going and working for a pharmaceutical company, spraying chemicals in its eyes for clinical trials, or they became veterinarian in a clinic that does euthanasia. And I know that their heart is hurting, right?
Absolutely.
They're in pain because this is not what they want. And again, good people trained in the wrong stuff. And so, of course, if they can learn about animal chiropractic and nutrition, because you and I, we treat a lot of pet and furry family members. And we understand that a lot of pets are being fed the same processed food every single day for every single meal. And that is just horrendous. Just imagine, doing that to a child, you would probably be locked up. But we're doing
it's
that
like
to
McDonald's
animals.
every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Just as bad, right?
Yeah.
Just as bad as these kibble. And then they have these medicine diets. Hills has a brand.
Hills
is a brand that
Science.
has these pharmaceuticals. They put pharmaceuticals in the process. And so the same challenges that we as humans deal with, same with our animals. And it's extremely important that, number one, start working with the animals, follow Dr. Stephanie's recommendations. I always recommend eating a raw diet. Cats,
Absolutely.
dogs, for the most part, be raw carnivore, and on occasion a vegetable. So the cat will eat the vegetables when they eat the bird's stomach because the bird ate seeds, right? And that's usually pretty much it. But all the corn and the soy and the grains and roots that are in these processed foods, they're not doing anything good for the dogs and the cats. So first and foremost, you or your animal are dealing with any health issues, stop injecting the poisons. If you're on any medications, do your best to get to a natural health practitioner, restore your health, remove the toxins, the heavy metals, the chemicals, the pesticides. eliminate your food sensitivities, start rebuilding your organs and glands and tissues with nutrient-dense foods, and your life is good, so much better. There's, like I said, I was put on a mission to help find cures to certain diseases, and in doing so, I found that literally every health problem is linked to poor nutrition and chemical toxicity. Mm. So if people can at least address that and receive chiropractic for optimal nervous system health, we would have a much healthier planet and a lot of happier people. So
Yes.
yeah. So if you're watching the contact Dr. Stephanie, find somebody. I know you may be a little frustrated with who you're working with. That's fine. We love collaborating with people or not. If you want to transition over to us, we're here to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate your time and your knowledge and energy and your willingness to share what you know so we can help more people.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining myself and Gerald on today's topic about medications, how they impact the body, how they change communication in the body, and some different solutions that you could have to help improve your health in a natural way. I am Dr. Stephanie Ballman with Thrive Vision, and here's how you can get in touch with me. The top number takes you directly to our human line, and the bottom number is a number that we use to communicate about animals and education about animals. So please make sure that you jot these numbers down, take a picture, put it in your phone, put it in your notes, put it somewhere where you can find it so you can contact us. And then here's some different ways that you can follow us. So please join us for more as we move through the eco files and we help you improve your health. I hope you're all having a wonderful day, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.